Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Invincible, Season 2, Episode 7. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Once again, everybody's still going through it. A lot of emotional trauma and pain people are going through. So first and foremost, let's start off with Mark's side of things, which I think is a nice starting off point. The fact is that Mark is still in the aftermath of trying to figure things out with Amber. It's like they're at Comic-Con and everything, which I love that whole bit where like Mark is talking to the guy who writes Seance Song. It's like, oh yeah, like season 2 of the anime is going to, the animated show is going to come, but it's going to take a while. Animation takes a while. It's like, oh yeah. And then they start doing these little meta bits. It's like, oh yeah, like we cut the, we make, we kind of cut the budget or like, we do things animation wise. So it's like, oh, have you ever noticed like sometimes when the character's talking, the screen cuts off so you don't see their mouth, and then Mark's like, oh, that's interesting, while he's covering his mouth. And they even like, it's such a meta bit. I love it because like obviously everyone's biggest complaint was, man, how long are we gonna have to wait for season 2 of Invincible? It took like 2 years over. Obviously it took a very long time, and obviously we had like a couple month break in between, but still it's like, I love that. And even at one point it's like, yeah, even to the point like the animation style looks even completely different, like you're watching a different show. I'm like, I love that bit. The guy's voiced by Tim Robinson too. It's just like, that shit's hilarious. Which makes me go like, I wonder is the comic as meta as that? That's because it's like 2 minutes of an inside bit. I love that. It's just like, it's an inside joke. I love it. Yeah, but also it's like, hey, like, give animators a break. Animation takes a long time. And they'll even be joking, like, yeah, we obviously put a lot of attention and care in, like, the anime, especially in the fights and stuff, to make them as epic. But also, like, I just love the meta bit, and I'm just curious, like, was a comic ever that meta, in its own capacity? It doesn't necessarily have to, it's not going to be meta in this capacity, because once again, this is the show in the form of animation, but I'm curious, like, did the comic have its own meta to it in any capacity or regard? But yeah, like, Mark is just trying to make things work with Amber. It's like, oh, I'm here at Comic-Con, and we're enjoying it, but like, yeah, this is something I want to do. I just figured, comic books is mainly the thing I'm mainly into, so I want to do something you're into. She's like, if I'm not happy, I'll tell you. He's like, okay, sorry. It's just, they're still in this awkward phase because they haven't fully figured everything out post last episode. It's still there, a lot of the underlining issues, and so Amber's like, I probably read more comic books than you do these days because you're off doing the superhero thing. But before they could spend any time together, Eve calls up Invincible because, like, hey, Rex is off on his own. He left the hospital because he's trying to get back out there. Very similar parallel to where Mark was at the beginning of the season. And, like, he wanted to get out there because he was trying to make up for things, like, especially what happened in the world with Chicago because of him and his dad. So he's trying to make up, trying to prove a lot to himself. Rex is in exactly the same boat. I thought it was kind of a neat little, like, continuation where we find out Eve is like, yeah, I had to, like, deal with something. And it was her, like, I guess Kilcannon got out again, or maybe he got away during everything went down on the bridge. Cause we saw him get knocked out, but we don't know if he got away while Eve was trying to rescue that couple. But either way, she caught him again, and it just because she took the thing that he had from Robot, so it's most likely while she was distracted, he probably got away. So kind of tying up that loose end, which I'm curious if the thing that she got back from him that was left by Robot, if that's going to be significant or not. I just thought that was kind of a nice little like tie back into like what's going on there. But yeah, like I said, the Rex thing was really interesting because he's up there going up against like what the Octo boss or whatever, and he's like speaking broken English because he's like, oh, I had to learn your language and stuff like that. That whole bit back and forth, and Rex is just trying to prove himself. So luckily, and he is definitely a better person now because he would have like obviously like Mark. It's reflective of season 1 episode 3 when they were training to be a part of the Guardians of the Globe. Rex was like, I didn't need your help when he stepped in with the Monster Girl and Rex fight, but this time he just gladly accepts. He's like, yeah, you take care of those guys, I'm gonna take care of the boss. He's like, are you sure, man? He looks pretty big. It's like, nah, man, come on, trust me, let me do this, I need this. And once again, Mark understands. So luckily Rex took him down with like his enhanced hand, and it's like, cool, I'm gonna remember that from now on. Let's start with that from now on. And it's just, yeah, this conversation about like, right, like the fact is Mark was able to come back from everything that he went through, and Rex is like, dude, I don't know anyone that wouldn't have been able to do what you did and came back like after everything, and Rex is trying to do the same thing. And yeah, it's wild. And so Mark wants to make more time for him and Amber, especially because there's so much spiraling. Because he is entitled to that normal life, have a girlfriend, have the life that other people do. But it's the thing that comes with being a superhero. You don't get that happily ever after. It's a tough road. So he's trying to stay in school, and turns out his new principal is Principal Winslow, which I thought that was kind of neat. When he was like, "Oh, I understand your circumstance," I was like, "Wait, do you know he's invincible? Did you always know?" But then it's like, no, he's like, "Right, you're going through it because your father's dead." It's like, right, that the story that was told of like, yeah, I know you're going through it, but if there were any other principal in this situation, they would have suspended you. So I'm gonna give you like basically a month probation of, you're going to stay here, but you got to prove to me in this month that you are choosing this. Because at the end of the day, you have to make a decision, Mark. And he's looking back and he's staring out at the door because he's thinking about Amber on the other side. It's like, even if you're not for yourself, do it. Find something to do it for. And it's like, right, he's going to do it for Amber, Because it's like, right, that's even the reason why he wants to go to college. Because this is supposed to be them doing this together. Like, And once again, you could allocate it and just say like, "Oh, you're young, like, what does that matter?" But it's like, yeah, when you're a teenager or you're a young adult, this is someone you love. You want to make it work. I think it's okay to try and fight to make a relationship work. You might be like, "Oh, this isn't, oh, you're a teenager, like, there's plenty of fishes." It's like, no, like, when you're in love with someone, you care about them deeply and you want to make things work. Once again, we're also talking about a relationship. We haven't seen all of it because even throughout season 1, we have no idea how long they've been together. They were together like a couple months throughout season 1 while they were in high school. But then you also, let's not forget, we skipped a couple like months in between like episode 2 and 3 of this season. So they've been together even longer. So for all we know, it could be like a year or so that they've been together. So it's like, right, you're young and in love, and I think any adult would kind of feel the same way too. Like, obviously, you're older, you probably recognize some red flags. You probably be like, yeah, this probably won't work out. But when you're young, and this is probably won't. I mean, we don't really know any of the relationship Mark's been in. Amber's probably been in relationships, but it's still a thing of like, you're young and you're experiencing love and you want things to work out. He even had this conversation with his mom, which I thought was beautiful. It's like, he got advice from Art last episode, Amber got advice from Eve, but Mark's trying to understand things from his mom's perspective, because her and Nolan did date, and it was great. It's the seduction of dating a superhero. She was like, he swept me off my feet. Like, I'm dating a superhero. It's like, yeah, that's cool and dope, but then it became a lonely situation because it's like, not only was he away so long saving people, but eventually when she had Mark, like, I had to kind of like single parent you for like weeks on end. And it's like, because she even said it herself, where she's like, I thought having you would fix things, just like Mark's like, I thought telling Amber the truth would fix things. But it's like, I don't know if it's worse or not, but his mom's like, no, the truth is always better. It might be a hard pill to swallow, but the truth is always going to be preferable. And it's just, it's a rough situation. So, because Mark doesn't want to make like, cause he brought it up last episode too, about when he was talking to Art about those, like, oh yeah, feeling left behind by his mom and him feeling left behind by Nolan. And it's just like, are we really in a position to complain? He's out saving the world. We feel like douchebags. And once again, Amber was making that exact same point of like, I feel like an asshole being like, oh, I want you to be with me. It's okay to feel lonely. It's just that kind of feel like you get left behind. And it is best to kind of discover this early on in the relationship. And because Debbie compartmentalized. She had to stay because it's like, hey, she was raising Mark. So it's kind of like, yeah, you just kind of make it work. But it doesn't make, that meant like decades of that loneliness still being there. Because she focused on raising Mark rather than her own happiness. So, which we see that's kind of bubbling to the surface because her coworker Paul was like, oh, want to have dinner or whatever? It's like, yeah, just a regular dude. You need something good in your life after like all the shit with Nolan. Like, when you find that basically your entire marriage and relationship and your life was a lie, Plus he's a homicidal, genocidal maniac. So it's like, yeah. So, but obviously for Debbie, it's like, I don't regret ever being with Nolan because it brought you and your brother in my life. But it's also at the same time, it's like, yeah, but if it wasn't for me and Oliver, like, would you ever be with Dad? And Debbie's like, I don't know. Like, if I had to do it over again, would I have never met with Nolan? And it's like, knowing what she knows now, that's a complicated thing. It's like, she can justify it now because it's like, well, regardless of Nolan being here or not, I mean, I wouldn't even want him to be here, but still, helping raise your brother, it's like, it's hard doing that alone. But then on top of that, like, if I didn't have the family ties to like, she didn't have the family ties to Mark and Oliver, like, would she even bother, like, like she would want nothing to do with Nolan knowing what she knows now. And it's like, because it's like everything about your relationship was a lie. Like, it's understandably like, I wouldn't want to go through that heartbreak, break, and pain, that decades of loneliness, where it's like you could have spent your life being happy with someone that could actually make you happy. And she was happy with Nolan, but all those memories are tainted now because of who he is. So not only do you have all the good memories are tainted now because it was all bullshit, plus the years of loneliness where it's just like he'd be gone for weeks at a time. It's just like, it's just one thing after another, and it's just that whole that relationship is forever poisoned. Like I said, the only good stuff that came out of it sitting beside her, is Oliver and Mark, So either way, Mark made the decision like, hey, I'm going to leave everything to the Guardians of the Globe, and I'm going to just be here with you, Amber. And they fly around. They're having a great time. It's just, they get to just be, it's like, right, kind of enjoy the benefits of dating a superhero without him having to go off and do the superhero thing. It's still the thing of like, is it really right? Like the ethical morals too of, I'm taking up a superhero's time, you should be on call doing that. I mean, that's also the conversation of like, oh, shouldn't superheroes be like active 24/7? It's like, well, I mean, you're on call 24/7, but it's no different than like a firefighter or anyone that has a public service job that puts you in the line of fire, like a cop or a firefighter, for example. So it's like they're not on call 24/7. They can't, but it's like they have days off, But it's like, yeah, that's humans. Humans have limitations. You're a superhero, but it's like, Mark's not fully Viltrumite, even though his Viltrumite blood makes him practically pure. He's still part human. He once again, it's that thing of like entitled versus what, like, do you need to put in your like, hey, I don't mean to use entitled, but someone would view it as entitled, like, oh, you want to have a normal life? No, you're a superhero. Get out there and save the day. But it's like, no, I want to have a life too. Like, I can't just be superhero 24/7. You burn yourself out that way. You probably numb yourself a lot by doing that. If you don't, I mean, everything in moderation. There has to be a balance, and Mark hasn't quite found that balance, and he's trying to strike that balance. It's really quickly too. Speaking of the Guardians of the Globe, they're in a rut of a mess right now, because I love Bulletproof pointing out, he's just like, this team is a hodgepodge, because like Samson's like, no man, we're like the best superhero team ever. And it's like, well, Rex was like not Rex, let's start with Rex. He was like, Rex, the dude got a bullet that took out like half his brain, and he's dealing with all the trauma of that. Ray broke every bone in her body trying to get out of that lizard league, dude, after he tried to expand inside of his body. Obviously, Kate's dead. Immortal is a fucking mess. Rudy, a genius, like, went through so much just to be with the girl that he likes. He took the DNA of a fellow co-worker to make himself younger to date another co-worker, and that's kind of a hot mess. And then you also have Monster Girl, who is getting younger every time she uses her power, but she kind of seems like she doesn't care. Because once again, it's coming from the perspective of Rudy wanting to fix her. The moment he used that word, I was like, you shouldn't have said that. Help her is one thing, because she was like, I am cursed, not broken. And I think that's what it is. Like, she doesn't want to be seen as like, I think it's also like, right, this is my burden. I've had to deal with it my entire life, or a good chunk of my life. I don't need you here trying to fix everything, because I think it's just, I'm not something that needs to, I'm not broken. I'm not something, you treating me like I am, like I'm a project that it needs to be fixed. This is my burden to bear. And like, you could tell, like, I think she understands where Rudy's coming from. It is a good place of like, hey, I fixed my circumstances, we should fix it. Because that's also the thing of like, oh, Rudy's in love with a girl who doesn't love him. And just, it's just a complex of emotions that I think Monster Girl or Amanda feels about it. Because like I said, she was looking back at Rudy, and she appreciates him like making a suit of armor reflective of her monster transformation, so she doesn't have to like transform. But it's like, I'm not going to let you put a chip on my head. It'll be like minor surgery, medical. It'll be a minor medical procedure, because medical procedure, when you say that, is very different from surgery. Surgery makes it big. It's like, no, we're doing a small minor medical thing. So, and then Samson's like, oh, I kind of feel left out. And he was like, Bulletproof was like, bro, you're bald. The whole name situation came about back when you had hair and stuff. But Samson's like, yeah, we not perfect? Sure. But at the end of the day, like, and we've gone through some shit, but the fact is we stand up. We we stand back up. We get back up after everything. That's what makes us the best in the game. The Bulletproof's like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's like, oh yeah, mom and dad are fighting Cecil because Cecil and Immortal have that back and forth about everything. And for Immortal, it's like, dude, I was so caught up in my bullshit. We almost didn't save the day when it came to the Martians and the Secoids because I was so busy beefing and couldn't trust Invincible. And then I almost started shit with Alan in space. Like, I'm not in the right headspace. I need to walk away. He's like, I'm a moored. Like, I've been through so much. I've lived so long. Losing Kate was just like the final nail in the coffin. He's like, I haven't been well for a while. It was just Kate's death was just the final like strike. I was broken. And so Cecil's like, cool, take time off. Well, we will revisit this, but you're not quitting. So now Rudy's back to his position in leadership, and that's going to be interesting to see how he balances that with what he wants to do with Amanda, aka Monster Girl, and how that, because the whole reason why Immortal took over is because the reason why the Guardians weren't shining like they were supposed to because it was a lack of leadership on Rudy's part. So I don't know, it's gonna be interesting to see where that all goes. But like I said, circling back to Mark and Amber, they're having fun, it's great, and they're trying like, oh, let's get Mark will work together, get your grades back up. And then all of a sudden he gets visited from Anissa a Viltrumite, and it's like, what the fuck? And she's threatening Amber. It's like, cool, if you think you're fast enough to get over here before I rip her in half, I want to talk. And you're like, fuck. I mean, to be fair, it's like, how long did you think you could just like skirt by? Krieg made it clear you were going to kill like a couple million to make the planet fall in line. You could kill like a couple hundred, maybe thousands or whatever, but if you don't comply, we will come to Earth and we will kill millions to make them capitulate. So, and now Mark's in that situation and Amber's scared as shit because it's like with a flick of a fucking wrist, like she could be dead. Like she moves her arm too quickly, could snap Amber in half, And it's like, yeah, cool. You don't come up there to talk to me, I will kill everyone here, beginning with her. And it's just like seeing Amber break down because Amber's never been in the thick of it where it's like the superhero thing of like, oh, the person you cared about is being threatened. So Mark goes up to talk to her and she's like, right. And she tries to tell like the scales of him being a hero. It's like, cool, you want to protect this planet, but we've looked at our research. This planet there's an 18% chance that this planet will survive the next 2 centuries. Basically, the power-hungry greed that is humans, you're burning through your resources and going through it so quickly, like, humans are their own destruction. It's like, but we, the Viltrumites, we could save them from everything, like, but it's like, what about the planets that don't submit, like, they should be under your whim to do it. Because we haven't actually seen what planets that are under the Viltrumite rule look like, Being under someone else's thumb, having your free will taken from you. I mean, we've seen a tiny bit of it. We saw Earth resisting in the first episode in an alternate dimension where Mark joined up with Nolan to conquer Earth. So there's that. I mean, once again, let's not forget Mark and Nolan joined together in most continuity, in most universes out there in the multiverse. And so you add in that along with like... But anyway, the point is like, oh, we could do so much. Like a lot of the points Nolan was trying to make in the season 1 finale, Anissa is trying to make the same point too. I should also point out Chantel Van... Oh god, I'm blanking on the actress's name. It's Chantel Van Santon. If you're Prime Video wise, you will recognize her as she played Becca in The Boys, but this is actually her third rodeo with superhero stuff because she was also in season 2 of The Flash as like a love interest. So it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting, kind of having her in the superhero world again. I wonder, there's probably other superhero stuff she's probably done I'm just not thinking of, but those are the 3 like I definitely know her from. But either way, what was actually the first thing I ever saw her in? Was The Flash the first thing I ever saw her? I swear there was something I saw her in before The Flash. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was like, I feel like there was something before The Flash I'd seen her in. But either way, once again, tangents and all that aside, she's trying to make this point of like, right, you need to capitulate because we can do more good. Like, yeah, you're saving lives, but how many lives will be lost in the long run? But under the Viltrumite rule, yada yada. Obviously, she's putting a much better spin to it because Nolan kind of fumbled the ball, especially when he screwed up the personal element. But I mean, like, yeah, your mom, she's a pet. blah, 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 blah. You kill the Guardians of the Globes. It's like, yeah, that's kind of like hard to kind of brush past that. But the Viltrumites have their very perspective of like, oh, we're going to be the betterment of humanity. So, in fact, she even helps Mark when he's dealing with a kaiju situation, which I love that she like sped through it like a bullet. And then also when she came out on the other side, she stopped so suddenly, literally the blood flew off her body. Because I guess it's like, right, she was moving so fast, the blood stuck to her. But the moment she stopped moving, like, suddenly stopped, the blood just shot off her, not a spot of blood on her. I was like, I actually think that's actually pretty dope. But despite all that, they saved the ship and everything, but Mark still won't bend the knee. It's like, right, like free will. Like, yes, humans were not perfect, and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do the wrong thing sometimes, but we still should have our own choice. It should be up to us. So you shouldn't be up to you, because we also know how you roll. If people don't fall in line, what are you going to do? You're just going to kill everybody who doesn't fall in line. And she makes a point. It's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna rock your world. I'm gonna teach you a lesson. In fact, she's even pissed. Like, how dare you even fight back when I'm trying to educate you? They even like, they're examining her. They're like, dude, she's faster than Nolan. Now, whether she's stronger than Nolan, that's another thing. They never really get into that. But she's faster than Nolan, so Mark can't keep up. I mean, he held his own against one of the Viltrumites back on Thraxa, but I think this is a different situation. It's like, are you ready? Because he even says it later on. He's like, I wanted to kill her for laying her hands on Amber, but it's still like, yeah, that wanting to kill her doesn't mean shit if you can't lay hands on her. So I guess that shows like the others are just like, I wonder if she above faster than most Viltrumites, or like, how many, once again, it's like the power scaling, we don't know. I mean, unless you've read the comic, you know what the power scaling is, but we don't know which Viltrumites are stronger, which ones are faster. Because Nolan is like probably highly regarded amongst people for being extremely strong. That's why it's the whole like, really, you're Nolan's kid? Hey, let me see how you do for Nolan's kid. So she's faster than Nolan, but Nolan must be like the more proficient fighter and just straight up stronger. So he probably has the tactics and the fighting prowess, but she has the fighting powers and she's just extremely fast. But she's still stronger than Mark. So, but it's like, right, if you don't let that, like in that moment, he didn't really let, like in the fight against Machine Head's people in episode 5 of last season, a little bit when he went up against Nolan in the season finale, he's had those moments where that Viltrumite in him kicks in. He even says like, yeah, I felt a little bit of like, almost like my dad kicking in. He kind of felt that a little on Thraxa too, but yeah, she's whooping his ass. He can't really do anything. He's landing some few blows. Once again, it's kind of like a repeat of the fight with Nolan. She's just whooping his ass all over the place and telling him like, right, you need to submit, but Mark's won't. Even Cecil's like, all right, tell her that you're going to like take over the plan. That way they'll leave and we can try and build up a plan before shit hits the fan. But it's like, Mark won't. Even later on, Cecil's like, why would you do that? You took quite the gamble for a few words, but Mark's like, no, it wasn't just a few words, because for him, it's like, if I bend a knee here, like, I'm just going to like, even if I just say those words, I can't even allow myself to say the words. This is my interpretation, because it's like, I know what's in me, my dad, and what my dad was able to do without any like hesitation. It wasn't until he beat the ever-living shit out of me, split me open, broke my teeth, which I even love. Rex is like, you were able to grow back teeth. I almost forgot about that, but it's like, yeah, he beat me within an inch of my life, and that's the only thing that stopped him, not the thousands upon thousands of people he murdered or used me to kill hundreds of people on the fucking train. So it's like, it's like I cannot for a second even allow myself to utter those words, because because that goalpost could get moved more and more, where I'm like, okay, this is acceptable. Saying this is acceptable, and how much will eventually be before it's like, well, this is acceptable, and this is acceptable, until you eventually turn on your dad. That's his greatest concern. Like, since the beginning of this season has been his biggest concern of, I don't want to be my dad. And especially, I don't want to be like any other Viltrumite, because I've seen what you guys are capable of, who you are. I mean, even Anissa, I keep bouncing back and forth, but it's like, what are the Viltrumites? Viltrumites is like, we don't kill for pleasure. We do get pleasure out of killing. It's like, I see there's a distinction. I don't think the distinction fucking matters, but sure, there's a distinction. But yeah, like Mark's refusal to give in, she's like, fine. But the next one that comes to this planet will not hesitate. So you better get your head on straight next time, kid. Because like Earth's defenses, like all they had was Mark. Like there was no one else. Like the Guardians of the Globe were like 22 minutes out. We got some fighter jets, but obviously that didn't do jack shit against Nolan. So it's like, what are we gonna do? Like, Mark was their only option at the point. So I'm like, God, what's going to happen? So in the aftermath of it, she leaves, and Mark goes and sees Amber, and obviously she's shaking because it's like, oh my gosh, she could have killed me. And once again, it's like the thing of, I know my life is small, it's not as big as saving the world, I know I'm being selfish, and it's sucky that I feel this way. I feel like such a piece of shit because I feel guilty about that me wanting you to spend time. She's like, I know it's insignificant and small, but it's still my life. My life does matter. It's just they're in two different worlds, and their worlds just can't collide. They can't operate together. And so Mark's like, no, she's like, I know, don't tell me I'm brave and strong. I know that this is different. It's just, it's scary. And Mark's like, yeah, I can't. My dad told my mom that everything was going to be fine. Like, my mom was never worried. Because, like, no. I mean, the first time she'd ever really gotten worried was in the aftermath of episode 1. In episode 2, when they found out about Nolan. Like, oh my God, I've never seen him like that. Like, she was scared. And then, like, at the end, with the Flaxen thing, she's like, oh, well, he'll be fine. I'm sure he's talking to, So, it's just, that was her way to kind of compartmentalize all of that. But for Mark, it's like, my dad lied, and I'm not going to do that to you, Amber. So it's like, where did they go from here? It's like, they can't work. And it's like, what's the answer to this? And Mark's like, I don't know. And she's like, maybe that is the answer. And both of them crying. He's like, I'm sorry. She's like, I'm sorry too. It's like, it does suck. Once again, someone can easily, because I know some people can be dismissive, because I like, if you don't have the emotional connection, you're supposed to care about the characters. Hey, the superhero shit's fine and everything. I know some people are like, oh, care about the superhero. I get it. I used to be one of those people, but I love the story, the drama of it, like the character moments like that of like a relationship. I mean, being in love and just the taking that superhero thing of like protecting the people you love. It's like the only way to keep Amber safe is to like break up with her, because she, like, this was the first time like Amber had ever got drawn into some superhero shit. And now it's like, not only that, but it's like, yo, like, I was powerless to do anything. Not even just during the moment she had Amber. Not only that, but also in the moment I was fighting her, I couldn't do shit. I couldn't lay a hit on her, which is a very important thing to keep in mind, which we'll get to in a second. But yo, it's a scary situation all around. It's understandable. So it's going to be interesting to see where things go. But speaking of the whole, like, hey, no one being able to land a blow on her, is Alan's just in space. I guess he hasn't made its way back yet. I guess he might be taking a scenic route, just taking his time, just casual stroll. I mean, it's a very far way, so like probably even flying at fast speeds. But he comes across the Viltrumite ship that's the prison, and Anissa like shows up and fights him. But he was almost like, oh shit, that didn't hurt that much. And your boy not only hits her, draws fucking blood. Mark couldn't even draw blood. You're like, fuck yes, Alan. And she's like, oh, it's like, I'm going to take you prison. We're going to cut you open and find out where your source of strength. And I was like, oh, you're going to throw me in a prison. And he gets knocked out. But it's like, playing possum, huh? Gets thrown right there in the prison. Oh, hell yeah. So I guess he's going to bust Nolan out. Dude, shit's going to get wild next episode, because you have that. Plus the other stinger before the credits is Engstrom Levy shows up at Mark's house. And he's like, oh, like your mom. I've got your mom and your brother. Lo and behold, hey, you better come through, Mark. Now, this is going to be interesting, too, because Oliver being there, we know that Oliver is learning things faster. There's even the thing that even April was saying, like, there's a good chance. I just thought about that. I was like, oh, yeah, because I was thinking, like, right, Callista Flockhart. Once again, I brought up, like, obviously, like, Supergirl, but I was also like, oh, yeah, because of Chantel being from Flash, it's funny just thinking about that. Either way, with that all said and done, like, Oliver is learning faster, so they were bringing up the point that he might develop his powers, because Mark didn't develop his until, I guess, in the grand scheme of a Viltrumite, pretty late in life. Only he got his powers at 17, so we could have Oliver displaying powers at a very, very young age, too, especially as fast as he's developing. I think that's more so probably, like, the Thraxan in him than anything, because Mark is a human versus a Thraxan who have an accelerated lifespan, or shorter lifespan, but then you also have an extended lifespan because of the whole Viltrumite blood, so that's a whole thing. So I was wondering, I was like, man, we hadn't had Engstrom show up, and lo and behold, he shows up here at the very end. It's like every threat possible is hitting Mark's life at once. It's like, cool, the Viltrumites, they won't be too far behind, but luckily, hopefully, Alan's able to bust Nolan out, but you get him back on Earth. That's going to be a complicated mess of a situation. So there's that. Plus, he's got to deal with Angstrom, the dude with multiversal abilities, knowing what he's known across the multiverse. He's been all these episodes. He's all this time, these months and stuff. He's been searching for a means of taking care of Mark, and he's back because he's confident. So that's going to be interesting. Granted, that could help in the long run. It's like, hey, you want to help with some Viltrumites? Fucking whole planet full of them we need to be dealing with because they'll eventually circle back. But yeah, Angstrom's out for revenge. He's not going to do anything that's going to help Mark. He doesn't care about saving any other lives. He just wants Mark to pay, even though this is on Angstrom, but misplacing all his anger towards Mark. If anything, you could make the argument it's on Cecil for being like, yo, destroy and bust everything up. Whatever is going on, stop it. Surprised we also haven't seen the Mauler twins. I guess in the aftermath of everything, they're just keeping it low key. Maybe, I don't know. But some other elements we learned from Donald. We learned from Cecil and Donald this episode. It was a big question a lot of people had was this actually the first time Donald died? And there is a line of dialogue where Cecil was like, oh yeah, this is better than your previous one. Now, at the time, you could be like, oh, that's just him saying that because, yeah, your old body was just human and shit. Now it's like mechanical. But now it's like, no, he probably meant that literally as in your previous metal body wasn't as good. So we got you an even better one. They probably upgraded it. Because we find out Donald's died at least 39 times. He's the one that chose not to remember. Because much like the Immortal, he wanted time off. And I love Cecil being like, what the fuck? Is it something in the water today? Like, why does everyone want to fucking quit all of a sudden? But yeah, it turns out that he asked to not carry those memories anymore. That's a lot too, because hey, the pain of dealing with that, the trauma you carried. I mean, you died 39 times. The Immortals carried that trauma with him. Kate carried that trauma with her. Like every time, like one of her copies died, it was a whole thing, right? So he eventually asked for not to have his memories because he's like, yeah, you're good at what you do, Donald, and you figured that it would slow you down. So it was his choice. It wasn't even Cecil's decision. Because when he was like, yeah, it wasn't my call, and he's like, who call was it? I was like, is someone above Cecil? I thought Cecil kind of ran things. It's like, no, it was Donald's decision. He was respecting it. So it's like, what are you going to do? And I think for a moment, Donald was considering, no, he definitely considered, he was like, yeah, go ahead and wipe my memories. But then the William and Rick of it all, because Rick's having nightmares about Sinclair, which is kind of shitty that obviously Cecil's still working with him. It's just kind of like, yeah, he needs the reanimators, which they're not ready. So I believe I saw during the X-ray, I'm blanking on a dude's name off the top of my head right now. Eric Bauza, like, you'll know him because he's a very prolific voice actor. He does a lot of Looney Tune characters. Like, he's one of the current voice actors for a lot of Looney Tune characters. If you ever, there's a video I highly recommend you check out. Like, he did Just Kidding News probably like a year, maybe 2 years ago or something like that. And he kind of breaks down, like, obviously his approach to how he does a lot of the voices and the slight variations between, like, Bugs and Daffy or Sylvester or doing Pepe Le Pew. Like, it's really interesting. Like, when you, like, it's always interesting when you hear, like, voice actors just realizing, like, how much they shift their voice to do. Like, sometimes they completely transforms, but then, like, certain voice actors, once you hear their voice, you always will be able to hear it in things. Like, the example I always think about is, like, I'm always going to hear Johnny Young Bosch for the most part. I'm always going to hear Steve Bloom. I'm always going to hear Yuri Lowenthal type of situation. You know, sometimes I'll mix up Matt Mercer and Troy Baker to some extent, because to me there are differences, but sometimes there's overlap between their voices, so I will confuse them sometimes. Sorry, Troy Baker and Matt Mercer to admit that. But either way, tangents and all that aside, it's just, but either way, like, he's taking over for D.A. Sinclair, because if you don't remember, Ezra Miller voiced D.A. Sinclair in season 1. So I was like, I was curious about that. I was like, are you? I was like, okay. At first I thought it was the person who's voicing William. It sounded like it was him, but it's like, no. Either way, tangents and all that aside, I'm sorry. Either way, my point is, like, the thing about Cecil, it's like, right, you're helped with Rick and stuff like that, but now it's also like you're working with the person that butchered him, and it's like, you know, once again, he loves working in that gray area. It's where, you know, Cecil thrives. But yeah, Rick's a mess. It's like his memories, and like William, it's like, you can't really understand what I'm going through. No one can, but I'm like, Donald can. And Donald reveals himself. It's like, just when Rick's like standing on a ledge of the building, he's like, is this going to be high enough to kill me? Probably not anymore. And he's drinking, and Donald shows him, he's like, yo, I'm like you. In fact, I've been made like this 39 times. In fact, he's like, I'm losing more and more of myself every time I come back. In fact, my body's 98% machine now. It's like, Jesus, Donald. And it's like, how do you kind of contend with that? Because for Rick, it's like, I've lost, like, even when they, not only was I taken apart by, not only was I taken apart by Sinclair, I was also put together by, Cecil and his people, and like they didn't put something back. I'm missing something. And Donald's like, yeah, that's why I asked for my memories to be taken. But he was like, that's not, for him, it's like, he recognizes, but that wasn't the right choice. He was like, that was a mistake. Because memories are no memories. The fact of the matter is, I do what I do to help people. That's why I keep coming back every time. Because, and it's hard to carry those memories, sure, but it isn't just about you. It's about also remembering the people that are by you, the people you love, the people that love you, the people that you love, and the people that love you. Kind of like knowing you're not alone in that, and that beautiful moment, like Donald being able to like not only work out his own shit as he's figuring it out, but also to help out someone who's going through the same thing. Like kind of like, right, you're not alone. I'm going to be here for you, but also you have someone who cares about you right here with William, and it's so beautiful. And I thought that was just great. So, like I said, just everyone's going through it this episode. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us. It is the season finale. Yo, the season finale last season popped the fuck off. I have no idea what to expect from this season finale. Like I said, you got the Viltrumites out there in space, Alan and Nolan, but you also got Angstrom Levy like down here. Like, what other shit's gonna pop? Like, there's so many plot threads moving, and the emotional shit that everyone's going through. How's this season going to end? What is it going to do to set up for season 3? I'm so excited to see where this next episode, where the season finale takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.